Hey everybody, it's Kneecap here, and in this video I'm going to be talking about the new Retribution Paladin talent, Radiant Glory, and kind of how it works and stuff like that. So I had noticed in some of these beta videos that I'm talking about using this ability, but it is a new ability, and I should probably go over how it works for anybody who's not paying attention to like every little patch note, and or if you haven't seen the gameplay of it in any way yet. It's basically one of the capstone talents. Capstone just meaning it's at the very, very bottom. And what it does is it replaces Avenging Wrath. So every time you use your Wake of Ashes, you're going to get Avenging Wrath for 8 seconds baseline. And your abilities have a chance to activate Avenging Wrath. Your Holy Power Spender, so if you're casting Divine Storm, for example, has a chance to activate Avenging Wrath for, I believe it's 3.5 seconds baseline. And so that is a very small number there. But anyways, and it completely replaces Avenging Wrath. You don't have the button anymore. So you literally just use your Wake of Ashes when you want to use Avenging Wrath, essentially. And it's important to talk about this ability, I think, because it's also worth mentioning too. So if you take Divine Wrath to extend your Avenging Wrath, it does work on this. So it bumps up to 9.5 seconds for using it normally and up to 5 seconds on a proc of it. So basically you're looking at, if it procs once per minute, it's the same amount of wings uptime as your normal wings would be. The 23 seconds, I believe, with the Divine Wrath or whatever. It ends up equaling out the same. So it's just like, how do you want to do it? Like, how do you want to have your wings? Do you want it all front loaded, or do you want to have a sustained 23 seconds, right? Now, why I think this talent is going to be used, at least in Season 1, for some sort of content. I'm not convinced it'll be used for everything yet, although that is likely. There's still tons of tuning and tons of things to be done, right? So I'm not convinced it's going to be used for everything. I'm also not convinced that these tier sets are going to be final. However, the 4 set is Wake of Ashes increases your damage done by 10% for 8 seconds. Well, 8 seconds happens to be the baseline of Radiant Glory, right? 8 seconds. And so basically it's telling you, hey, we're trying to coincide this with this ability, right? And yeah, we can increase it with that, but because of the 4 set, maybe we don't even want to increase it with Divine Wrath, right? Maybe we do, maybe we don't. But whether we'll find that out in simulations and stuff later on, right? Like closer to the release and after tuning and stuff. But it's clear what we can see from a design standpoint, right? That's the important things you can take away right now. What are they trying to do with the design? Like in early on, before Dragonflight launched, we saw with design they were trying to build everything around consecration, right? And people really, really hated that, and they changed it. Like, everything was about consecration. And people are like, this is insane to make everything around consecration when it doesn't even move with us or anything. And they changed it. Now, it's clear that they, with this tier set and with that a talent, that they are trying to make that at least a Season 1 thing to do, to use, to try out. I don't think Rets are going to hate it, especially not as much as consecration, because there are some really positive uses to it. It's basically, do you want to just completely rely on your damage during your final reckoning or during your execution sentence, right? All of your damage is going to be during that, and it's going to be amped up with that tier set and with Wake of Ashes type things, right? And so do you want the damage in bursts like that, so like a 10-second burst of insane damage, or do you want the 23-second version of still really, really good damage in the front, but petering off a little bit as we get towards the end of that 23 seconds? It's not as much, obviously, right, as it is during that initial burst with all your abilities into it. And it's kind of doubling down on that. And the plus side is, as well, especially like a Mythic Plus setting, right, is you're going to use your Wake of Ashes without your Final Reckoning or Divine Toll in a Mythic Plus. But as you do that on the trash pack, there's no wings to back it up. In this case, you get a super powerful wings that gets the damage amp from the tier set bonus on that trash pack that you might not normally have a wings for. And so that's why, in my opinion, it's very good for dungeons. And I'm like, if this went live, next week, I would say we would definitely use this for Mythic Plus. I wouldn't even have to really consider it that much, but we're still a ways away. Like I said, tuning can happen, changes can happen. So I'm not going to say anything like that now, but I would say it's likely that this is going to be a Mythic Plus style thing that you're going to want to use. I don't know for sure for raid, for single target. Like for example, if a raid boss has, and what's cool is you might actually want to switch. So like in Dragonflight, for the most part, we have a single target build and we have an AoE build. But let's say a boss has a 20 to 30 second window where they take increased damage, or they're vulnerable, or there's no mechanics going on, so you just get to stand still and plant, right? It might be better to have traditional wings lasting that duration of 23 seconds or whatever, rather than just the 10 seconds, because you might not be, optimizing that time as well. And then when you go to use your 30-second wings on your next Wake of Ashes, it might be during a time where there's like no ability to sit still and do damage during that time, right? And the proc of it, right? The 5-second proc might happen again in a way that's not super helpful to you. So during a raid fight or whatever. And so there could definitely be raid fights, even if they tune this to be very strong and intend us to use it, there still could be raid fights where it wouldn't be as good, which is kind of cool, right? So you would turn this off, you'd have the point somewhere else. You would redesign your talents here. I just have my talents right now are set up in kind of a dungeon build or whatever. Doesn't really matter right now. Again, it's way too early to know, but this is kind of just how I have it set up for now. If you're wondering about some obscure talent choices, one thing again, this could easily change, but like right now I don't have Executioner's Will because it makes my Final Reckoning last so long and my wings only last 10 seconds. So the 12-second base on Final Reckoning is more than good enough. And I can put that talent point somewhere where it's actually getting more use, instead of 2 Divine Storms or whatever, 2 more Divine Storms without wings. I'm getting a full another talent choice instead. And so like that's one example of a little bit of a talent modification I have there, because of this Radiant Glory talent. It's also just interesting. I almost feel like Radiant Glory needs to be like its own thing, kind of like Searing Light or Divine Arbiter or something like that. Maybe, I don't know where you would put it exactly. Maybe move this somewhere and put it up here, but then it would kind of force you to take it, right? So I guess not, but kind of redesign in a way, because this is a completely changing ability, right? Radiant Glory is an ability that completely changes the way how you play. It changes your damage profile slightly, because now you're doing 10-second bursts every 30 seconds, and every minute is a big burst. So you have a big burst, mini burst, big burst, mini burst, over and over again. And so, it completely changes the way you play. So I do think it should maybe have a special slot. Maybe even you put something, I don't know how you would do it, but maybe like a straight line down from here and it's at the bottom as its own capstone. I don't know exactly how you would do it, but you almost need to make it like a special thing, right? Because it's completely game changing as far as like how you play. It's a very impactful would probably be a good word to use. It's a very impactful talent choice. And so just to show you how it works real quick before we do end the video here. So basically, I don't know what the move priority is going to be, but you when you're popping wings, normally you want to build the 5 holy power and pop wings, right? Well, you can't do that because this is still generating holy power. Your Wake of Ashes is still generating holy power. And so you either want to build the 2, or I'm not sure, you might even want to just start a fight with it and then use your Divine Toll to cap you out at 5. So starting out with 3. So with a hero talent as well, when you use Wake of Ashes, you're going to gain, if you have Herald of the Sun, you're going to gain Divine Purpose. So you get a free, let's just say Divine Storm or Temple's Verdict, but let's say Divine Storm. So we pop Wake of Ashes, right? And now we have a free Divine Storm, but we can use Final Reckoning. We can use Divine Toll immediately after if I had a target right now. And then we could go ahead and use 2 Divine Storms. And then we could, Judgment, whatever. And then another Divine Storm. And now we have our Divine Toll also generating some extra holy power as well, right? And so you have some interesting change up as far as at least possible rotation change ups, and a guaranteed rotation change up in terms of not wanting to overcap. So you don't want to build the 5 before you use your Wake of Ashes. And so I think that's very interesting as well as far as gameplay goes. And I like things that change up and still feel like Ret Paladin. Still, like the Consecration thing, I was not fully against it, but I was against it because like your consecration doesn't move, right? So if all of your damage is in your consecration, right, and then the boss has to be moved or the pack has to be moved out of it, and now you lose all your damage. I mean, that's just silly. And for everything to be built around it was silly. In this case, there's nothing like that, right? You can Wake of Ashes anything. You can Wake of Ashes while you're moving. That's not like ruining your gameplay, which is why I think that people will get on board with it. Now, I don't think people are going to want it to be used for everything. I think it'd be nice to not use it every time. Like if we just have Radiant Glory talented for every boss fight, every Mythic Plus for the entire expansion, then I think that could be boring. But if it's something that we use for dungeons one tier, we use it for certain boss fights another tier, something like that, where even for this first tier with them making this tier set bonus, even if we use it for everything the first tier, but then we use it here and there the rest of the time, I think that's fine too. But if it's going to be a mainstay, if it's going to be a thing we always take, then I think it definitely needs to be moved to its own capstone, as I talked about earlier. So I'll try to cut it off there. I know I yap a lot, that's kind of what I do. But I did want to kind of talk about the ability and how it works, so that way when I reference it in future videos, which I most undoubtedly will be, because given that it's set up to be used, that you guys can all kind of know what I'm talking about when I talk about Radiant Glory. So yeah, I'll cut it off there. That'll be it for this one. As always, I do ask you to please subscribe to the channel, because that helps me out a lot. If you're already a subscriber, I did just start a Patreon. If you would care to check that out and support me, you can do so. If not, that's fine too. And as always, everybody, have a good one.